And now, our feature presentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new episode of TBK Live, and I'm just going to address the elephant in the room. I've been dealing with mental health issues recently. It's just 2018's taking its toll. It is fucking me sideways, and not in a bad way. There are days where I'm like, you can keep fucking me, 2018. But today, I'm feeling better, so I'm going to let everyone know Spooktacular 5 is happening on Black Friday. Oh. So, but this episode and the next couple episodes before that one, even though that's like a week away, news broke this week, and I have to tell you, joining me today is Brody, by the way. Hi, Brody.
Hey, Richard, what's going on?
I probably should have introduced you before I went into a rant.
No, it's okay. I get the feeling this is going to be a more of a somber-esque show. I feel like I had to start it with some sort of joke, and that was the only thing I could do. We'll tell jokes, but I get you.
Yeah,
I get you.
So on Monday afternoon, or Monday, I think it was Monday about 12:30. I don't exactly know the time. I was in the midst of posting another writer's article, and honest to God, had the picture on it, was getting ready to hit publish. And my phone goes off, and I have TMZ alerts for a reason. I don't like having them, but they're there for, if there is going to be a celebrity death, the first person that breaks it's always going to be TMZ.
Which sucks, because TMZ, if you think about it, is just the internet's version of the National Enquirer.
But they're they're a lot more credible.
A lot more credible.
TMZ and the Hollywood Reporter is kind of who I've been getting most of my news from.
The Hollywood Reporter is a big one. Whenever I hear anything of this magnitude, I usually go to the Hollywood Reporter. If they get it, then I got to know it's true.
So I get the message on TMZ that Stan Lee had passed away, and I went, oh my God. And I had to stop everything I'm doing and write an article, because Stan Lee has influenced so much of the comic book culture that we have covered because of the movies and the comics themselves. But Stan Lee's also just transcended pop culture.
I mean, if you ask me, Stan Lee is pop culture.
Yeah, this has been the hardest one, and I know we talked about this a little bit before we went on air, but I figure we'll discuss it now. Since I've started the site, and I've been going down the road of doing more more nerd news and geek stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Every so often, there's just a death that hits me, and the last one that hit me was Bobby Heenan's, because we were recording S&S when I found out. And anybody who's an 80s wrestling fan knows that. There's been a few. Adam West's death hit me hard, because I was a huge 1966 Batman fan. And this one, I'm sitting there and I'm crying is when I started writing this, and I go, I don't want to do this.
I didn't cry initially because the shock of it, because Stan Lee, in my eyes, has been so old for so long, and I don't mean that as a diss, but you see him, he pops up all the time, and not just in the Marvel movie cameos, but he's all over the place, and he's just one of those.
Go ahead. He's always at every comic book convention. Sorry. I had to get that out there. Fine.
He's just one of those figures. You look at him and you know that everyone, there's no such thing as immortality, but you look at Stan Lee, and if there's anyone who could personify immortality, it's him. As old as he was, 95 when he died.
95.
And he never looked like a frail 95-year-old. It's funny. I went and saw Bohemian Rhapsody, which is a very good movie. But I have
problems with the premise of it. We'll get into that later. Not on this episode, but that's a different Yeah.
But the reason I bring that up is because after I'd seen it, I went to go watch like videos of like Freddie Mercury and stuff on YouTube, and I watched one of his last like live, like anyone had seen him publicly, and he looked awful. Like the man, his disease had taken a toll, and he did not look good.
Well, I mean, did he pass away in the early 90s? Was it 91?
Yeah.
And I mean, battling AIDS at that time was not easy. Like, it's not like it is now where they can control and everything doesn't flare as much.
Well, and I know that the way he died versus the way Stan died is different, but the reason I bring that up is because Stan was like 95 years old, and he still looked great. He was still out making public performances. He was still doing cons. Like, he is doing the cameos in all the Marvel movies. Like, he still looked like $1 million. Like, I knew that his time wasn't going to be forever, but I didn't think he was going to go like this or this soon.
But
you know,
but the last year, and I know that we're talking about stuff that's sad, and I feel this is all it's going to be, guys. And I know this is not your typical live episode, but there's reasons. I mean, it's Stan freaking Lee #1. But
he is responsible for like if it weren't, think about it like this, and I know that I'm not the first person to say it, and I know I'm not going to be the last in the coming months, but like, you look at the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and how those movies have forever changed film landscape going forward. None of that, not a single one of that would exist if it weren't for Stan Lee.
I mean, Stan Lee was a co-founder of Marvel. I mean, that
right.
I mean, it's one of those things where you're like, the first cameo is one thing in Spider-Man, but like, he made those characters that everyone loves, and the reason the comic book movies are so huge, he's part of that.
Right, like the characters like Spider-Man and the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and all of them, they've supplanted like Greek mythology. Like, you know, Greek mythology back in the day was
modern day mythology.
Like, exactly. Like, these characters are modern day Greek mythology. Like, everybody who's worth their salt knows who Spider-Man is, knows who, you know, the X-Men are, knows who, you know, maybe to a slightly lesser degree like the Fantastic Four are, but like, even so, like, that man has created a modern mythology for everybody to gather around. Like, you don't have to be a nerd to be into these things. Like, comic books and comic book conventions used to be the sole province of nerds and nerd culture, but his creations are so large and so wide ranging and so, like, I'm escaping the words right now, but the mark that he left on society in terms of his creations to literature at large, not just comic books, you just can't. The last time a titan of literature left that huge a mark on society, like, I don't feel ashamed in comparing him to like Bill Shakespeare. Like, everyone still reads Shakespeare to these days.
No,
like, we're still getting Romeo and Juliet's and, you know, and all that stuff, and people still look at him this far, you know, away from when he died as just the modern titan or a titan of literature, and that's going to be Stan Lee. It doesn't matter that in the way he wrote, because Bill Shakespeare was more classic poetry and literature and things of that nature, and even though Stan wrote like comic books, it's still literature. Like, those stories and those characters he created, while they had like fantastic powers and went on these super crazy adventures, are modern fables. Like, you look at, and it's been written ad nauseum, but like, X-Men is like the gay parable. Like, it's, you know, being afraid to come out and reveal yourself to the world, even though you're proud of who you are. Like, Stan didn't just write characters and comics just to, like, you know, fill colorful pages with like adventures and stuff. Like, this man tapped into the cultural zeitgeist before we even knew what it was. And
I mean,
he made.
Go ahead.
No. Finish, please.
The fun thing about recording over Skype and you're sad and stuff. That quote that's out there that he was, you know, like, talking about being ashamed to be in comic book art, like being a writer of comic books. And when you tell people that, they look down upon you. And that, I feel that's most of anything in the arts and entertainment industry.
Mm-hmm.
And he might be one of the first people that just stood up and went, screw you, in that aspect, and not trying to, because it's like, no, I love what I do.
I agree,
100%.
I think you really are 100% correct. He's one of the first like creators to bring something non-mainstream into the mainstream. I don't want to say he is the first. I know there have been plenty of creators in literature who've done that before him, but he's one of the few that
not
tapped
modern though.
What's up?
Not modern.
No, modern wise, no.
I mean,
Absolutely
outside
not.
maybe Stephen King and the occasional, like, I don't want to use the, like, and maybe J.K. Rowling. That's it. That might be it.
J.K. Rowling, I agree. Her Harry Potter books and the movies, and that is a cultural, behemoth that might not be matched. But I'm
trying to think of anybody who's created stuff lately that you go, oh my God, that's going to transcend everything.
And like even Stephen King, you bring up. Stephen King is one of the best authors alive today, and some of his stories, like when that movie came out last year and was like the biggest movie of the year, that he tapped into something there. But horror movies, awesome as they are, and as big a fan of them as I am,
they don't translate to the mainstream as well.
Not all the time. Sometimes you get a movie like It or like The Conjuring or something to that effect that does kind of cross into the mainstream and kind of appeals to everybody. That doesn't have, in terms of the horror franchise, whether it be books or movies or whatever, that's not a guaranteed thing, and it doesn't happen more. It happens not as much as you'd think. But whereas with Stan Lee, like every Marvel movie that's come out since the original Iron Man has been a bigger hit than the movie before it. And that's great that those movies are big. You know what I'm saying? Like even the lesser ones that people don't remember as much. Like to be honest with you, between you and I am a huge opponent of Iron Man 2. I really, really don't like that.
I didn't like that movie either. You're fine.
It made
I didn't like
bank.
that movie.
And we would not have that huge shift in cinematic language if it weren't for the foundation that he laid with the comic books. So, I mean, it's not just the comic books. Like his personality, like he wrote and he created some of the best literature this modern age has ever seen. But Stan Lee, the man, like one thing that I always loved about him is he represented very old school way of thinking. Like the man was married for how long?
And that's something we got to touch on. Joanne passed away last year.
I remember, and I mean, and he still carried on.
There is one story, and I mean, there's been a lot of different stories come out about how Stan, like, eulogies and people talking stories. Like Kevin Smith is one of the best, I believe, if you want to read something. But the hardest,
absolutely.
But the hardest one to read has been Todd McFarlane. If you don't know who Todd McFarlane is, he created Spawn. And Todd learned a lot under Stan Lee. Like, I mean, there was a panel in Dallas, and I can't wait for Ashley and Sharon on a show to tell the story of them walking into Stan Lee singing the Spider-Man theme with Todd McFarlane on a stage. So, but Todd McFarlane told the story. He's like, I sat down with Stan and he just wants to see his wife again. And you go, that just breaks your heart.
It does, because that man, his wife, like him and his wife were like June and Johnny.
Oh yeah.
June Carter and Johnny Cash. Like they were just meant for each other, and he was so good with her. And like, that really gave me like hope that, those types of relationships can still be had in this day and age. And that like kind of circles back to something else I wanted to say about Stan, is he was just a good guy, and he really valued the creativity. Like in this day and age, when it comes to comics or any type of edible entertainment that we digest, it's all reboots or reimaginings or remakes or sequels. You don't get like a lot of creativity in terms of the way of making new properties. And even with the comic books lately, like, it's always about rebooting the franchises or rebooting the universes. Like, DC, I know we're talking about Stan Lee, but like DC has gone through how many universe like relaunches?
Yeah, and they're getting ready to reboot again from what I've read. And
he stood for this level of creativity and the accessibility. That was what was important to him. Like these comic books these days are great stories. They're taking bold steps forward and they're making great new ideas, but they're starting to lose that kind of relatability that made the golden age of comics
so true.
really kind of relatable. Like, Spider-Man is as popular as he is because people can relate to him. People can relate to being that weird loner kid who just felt weird in his own skin despite whatever power he may or may not have. It's, with the Fantastic Four, like, that was a great book. Marvel's First Family, like, that was all about family values.
Which, by the way, I own the Reed Richards Sue wedding.
Yep, that's how I proposed to my wife. I didn't give her a wedding ring. I bought a first edition of the comic of the wedding of Reed Richards and
Sue Storm.
Do you know? I proposed to her with that.
Fun story. I didn't propose with it, but right before our wedding, we were at a comic convention, and I was like, I want that, and I bought it, and it was part of our wedding. So kind of we were on the same wavelength when it comes to love. Wavelengths.
Yeah, and it's just like stuff like that. Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, the X-Men.
Let's get into some characters. Let's get into some characters. I mean, there's so many. I mean, of course, Spider-Man, Hulk, which, I mean, the Hulk has gone through some horrible movie incarnations, but the TV show was great. The cartoons are great.
Mm-hmm. And the Hulk is not one of my favorite Stan Lee creations. And I've got to be honest with you, up until now, I don't understand how they've been able to screw up a character like the Hulk, but I think that they're finally kind of utilizing him the way
he should always be like a secondary character, almost in the way Bane should be. Just throwing that out there.
I don't even think that's another story for another time.
Yeah.
But Hulk was never one of my favorite characters or one of my favorite Lee creations. But like whenever anyone asks like which superhero you'd want to be, I think the correct question is which superhero represents you the most. Like everyone's always going to say they want to be like Wolverine or Spider-Man or Batman or Superman. No one ever asked the question like which superhero do you think actually represents who you are as a person? And the Hulk was always my answer because I could always I wear my heart and my emotions on my sleeve. 1 minute, like, I do, if something upsets me, like I will become a way. Hey, relax. Sorry about that baby in the background.
You gave this
I was, like I'm calm 1 minute and a wave of emotion the next. And I always I like that because, sometimes I just can't control my emotions. Sometimes whether it's anger or sadness or depression or stress, like sometimes my emotions pilot me. So from an emotional relatability perspective, I always took to the Hulk because I always could see myself as that type of person when I get too emotional. So while he's not one of my favorite characters, he's definitely one of the most relatable to me. And that's, kind of feeds back into this thing that Stan Lee did so well that comic creators these days kind of don't really grasp as much, I think.
I think today's comics, and I know I'm going to get a lot of hate mail for what I'm about to say, and I'm fine with it. Today's comics, you could read one and never pick it up again, and never pick up another title again.
That's another podcast for another time. I agree with you for the most part, especially with the Marvel books. Marvel lately.
Oh, Marvel comics are terrible.
The Marvel comics are not that great, and the DC comics are really killing it. And it's not even necessarily because of that relatability thing, because they don't have that. But DC has kind of leaned into their really heavily leaned into the Greek gods aspect of comic book mythology. Like they're treating their characters as gods. So I really kind of respect that. But comic books in general, for the most part, are just not what they used to be. They're really good. There are some good stories out there, and there's some good authors and illustrators doing really good work. But the comic medium these days, it's telling when your comics are influenced by the movies that come out.
Yeah, and I don't like that.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe is successful. It has been really kind of informing the comics lately. If something big happens in Nick Fury, for example, they turned Nick Fury black in the ultimate version of the Marvel Universe, and that's because of how successful Samuel L. Jackson's interpretation of the character
I just want to say, though, I love Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. Like, now when I think of Nick Fury, because I never really knew much about Nick Fury before.
Uh-huh.
But when Samuel L. Jackson took it over, I'm like, I just see him as Nick Fury now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You get people like him or Hugh Jackman or Downey Jr. and these actors you see portray these characters, and you're like, I can't see those characters as any portrayed by anybody else. And so much so that now in the books and in like the animated movies, they're kind of patterning the characters off of their, movie studio counterparts. Like,
I don't know if I have a problem with that, with with some exception, because they always change the looks anyway. And I know why they're doing it. It's to make it more relatable to people going, oh my goodness, I've seen that movie. Why don't I pick this up? And I get that.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work all the time.
No, it doesn't. But I mean, it's just, but you know what? At the end of the day, all these different interpretations, all these different versions of characters and such, it just speaks to the strength of the enduring strength of the characters that Stan created, that they can keep going through all these different changes and go through all these different versions and variations throughout the years, and they can still remain as fun to watch as they are.
So to add to that, Juggernaut, Black Widow, Iron Man, Scarlet Witch, Doctor Strange, Galactus, Groot, Mary Jane, by the way. I love to hear Stan Lee talk about the death of Mary Jane.
Oh man!
Or no,
I love
Stacy. Gwen Stacy. I love when he talks about Gwen Stacy so much, because oh my god, couple more: Black Panther, Loki, Punisher, Silver Surfer, Doc Ock, Gwen Stacy, Kingpin, Red Skull, Doctor Doom. I mean, the X-Men, all the
list goes on and on.
Daredevil. I mean, Thor, Loki. There's so many where you go, my childhood was defined by Stan Lee, and not a lot of people will remember that, because I know a lot of people watched the X-Men cartoon growing up in my age range. Did you ever watch that one?
Which one?
The X-Men Saturday morning cartoon.
Of course I did. I have the first 2 seasons on DVD.
And a lot of people, that's something that a lot of people are like, I love that cartoon. Like, Stan Lee is the reason. And you don't ever put that together until you go, oh, especially now as an adult, knowing who created the characters and everything.
Like I've always been into the X-Men and the Marvel comics, even as a little kid, the cartoon, Spider-Man, all that. But I never knew who the creator was actually until I saw Mallrats. When you see him talking to Brody, and then he starts listing off all the characters, and then I'm like, oh shit. And then that was like my first introduction to the man, and it's just like it really, like, it's making me upset more and more to think about it, because he is nerd culture. He really, really is. Like, there's other stuff. There's plenty of other stuff, like, that feeds into nerd culture.
We're going to circle back to Mallrats in a minute. Like, I have to bring up Mallrats in this conversation. But the thing with Stan Lee now was, he was still meeting fans because he loved everybody. And I know his age, and I know he couldn't hear. Like, his hearing was going, and I know that they had to tell him what to do, and I feel like
there was some legal issues with his estate lately.
I think, honestly, and I know that got taken, like, I know that he came out and said he was fine and everything. For Stan to still be doing the comic conventions in his 90s and meeting fans tells you how much he loved everyone.
And that's the thing. Like, you don't get, like,
did you just unzip your pants? Wait a minute. Did you just unzip your pants? What the hell? All I heard was a zipper.
I'm taking off my track jacket. I'm sorry.
That was like, okay, well,
I'm doing this podcast in the nude.
How do you think I do every fucking podcast? But no, that's jeez, man.
I'm taking my jacket off. I'm sorry, it's real hot in the apartment.
It is.
Another thing I loved about Stan was that he was a creator who loved his fans. Like, I'm sure creatives all over the world are appreciative of their fans, but like,
I got a story about this.
I got a little story too. When we went to Wizard this past year. Rob Liefeld was there, and if anyone is worth their salt, they'll know that Rob Liefeld is the creator of Deadpool. Deadpool is a huge character, one of the hugest characters that Stan Lee actually isn't involved with. And he was there, and there were just, tons of people lined up, and they're all dressed in various different Deadpool outfits and such, and everyone's excited. And he is there signing autographs, and I just kind of stood from afar and watched for a little bit, and it's like, it just didn't seem like he was really engaging with his fans. Like, he'd look up, he'd sign, he'd say hi, and then that'd be that. And he was charging a lot of money, and like he was charging, like, if you wanted to get a signed copy of the Deadpool 2 Blu-ray, it was like $100. I'm like, what the fuck? So, like, I mean, I'm sure he's a good guy, and I know they got to make money at the end of the day, but it just seems like he wasn't as engaged with his audience. And Deadpool's huge right now, whereas Stan always, even in his advanced years, just seemed like he was always doing it for the fans. And like, he just seemed, every time I see, like, I look online, I see someone taking a picture with him, whether it's a celebrity or just a fan, he's always smiling. He never had, I never in all my years of listening to him talk ever heard him say a disparaging word about anybody.
Oh,
he was
and that's
always
true.
just in the best mood and always super supportive. And that's another thing that really hit hard, because now, I mean, in terms of, think about it like this, in terms of comic, like, let's just talk strictly comic creators. How many people do you know on the level of Stan Lee?
I mean, there's no one on that level. I mean, there are people out there like,
you get like Todd McFarlane is
probably
one.
Maybe the closest one, like Todd McFarlane and
Frank Miller, I would imagine. I mean, he's not as big as those two, but like, he is very widely known. Like, he revived the Batman series, like his 1987 run on the Dark Knight Returns is probably like often cited as the revitalization of the Batman character. So like, he'd be another creator who I would say is a big or a titan of the field. But in terms of just the level of impact, I mean, nobody comes close.
Like, I think now we look at comics, like, we don't think of the writers as much as we do the artists. Because I mean, I see Neil Adams everywhere, and I love Neil Adams artwork, because one of my favorite Neil Adams covers is Superman versus Muhammad Ali, where it has like all the DC universe and the crowd and everything. But I mean, he didn't write it. I mean, he did the artwork.
Right. Stan Lee, like, that's another thing. Like, in this day and age, it's all about I don't want to say it's about the artwork, but it's about the imagery. Like, it's what images grab people, what images make people focus.
It's looks now. It's not the writing, it's the looks.
So like, there's a lot of amazing writers out there who are doing awesome work that are just getting overshadowed by I love the artwork. Like, my favorite comic book artist of all time is Alex Ross. Alex Ross is one of, if not the best artist I've ever had the pleasure of reading. But in terms of writing, it's still Stan Lee all the time. Like, Frank Miller is good. Jeff Johns, who's most notably known for Green Lantern on DC. See, and that's the other thing. Like, I'm blanking on Marvel writers. Like, I could rattle off a bunch of DC writers, no problem. But in terms of Marvel writers, like, I think Jeff Loeb is one. I think he did some Daredevil. I know Frank Miller did a run on Daredevil.
Okay,
too.
So there's a Marvel writer, and I'm not going to name him by name because he's local. He worked on Daredevil, or not Daredevil, Deadpool.
Okay.
He's also an artist, so he did some of the illustrations. I think he did a lot of the illustration on the Brian Posehn version of Deadpool.
Oh, I think I know which one you're talking about.
So we helped run a convention, and this is 2 years ago, and I was running all the panels. I was doing like the guy who asked all the questions and stuff, which was crazy for me, by the way, because that is the con that Brian O'Halloran was at, and I still have your photo. Just randomly hit me. Like, I'm looking
I'll get
at
it one day.
It's right there. So someone asked him, "Hey, how do you get into comics?" And these young children, and I think this is something Stan did really well, where he was talking to fans. He would build up the business, and did you know he struggled? Like, holy hell, that man struggled. Like, coming up in the comic industry, especially that time, that man struggled. Well, this writer or artist looks at these kids, and there's probably like 6 or 7 that are genuinely interested in getting into comics, and he tells them don't. And I'm sitting there like, I got to put down the microphone and leave the frickin' room, because
that's awful.
I didn't know what to say to that. And this dude is straight up a prick. And I don't throw shade usually, but baby's right. And That's by the way, this is your baby's debut on the podcast, so
I'm very, very sorry, but
don't be sorry.
the baby is very entertained by our conversation right now.
She's put more input in than some of the former hosts I've had on these shows.
Anyway, I'm sorry. You're saying about this guy who was telling kids not to get into comics.
He told him not to get into comics, and you're heartbroken when you see that because, like, I believe wholeheartedly that you should follow your dream. No matter what you do, whatever you want to do, you should try to achieve that. There's going to be struggles, and I don't feel like if you don't struggle, you're not doing it.
And even if you don't, like, you're not... I hate to be the Debbie Downer. You might not always get there, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try, because your dream is your dream for a reason. It's important to you, and there's not a single soul on this earth that should ever be able to convince you otherwise. Like you said, it's going to be a struggle, and it's going to be hard, and you're not always going to succeed.
And I mean, there's going to be ups and downs with everything. I feel that's just part of it.
Agreed.
And with this situation, like, I feel that hurt me. That really upset me. And I thought, you hear Stan Lee talk to his fans, and you're like, try for everything. Go for it. I didn't think I could do it, and then it happened. And you're like, it's so night and day. And yeah, there's more success through Stan Lee. I get that. But even before, and I know Stan Lee was probably making millions of dollars in the early 90s, but Mallrats, he seemed so humble then. I feel like that's just him.
Yeah, I've never gotten the impression that he was a very... I don't want to... Maybe stuck up's the wrong word to use. I don't get the impression he was humble. I mean, that's the best way I guess you can put it. He always was grateful for his success, and he's very humble about where he came from and where he was going, and he never let it go to his head. He was always just a down-to-earth good guy, and that's just not something that you get a lot these days. And that just sucks to hear that one of the good ones is gone.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, they did. They sent me they actually did respond. Okay. So, we'll talk about that later. It is a very cookie-cutter response. So let's talk about something that Stan Lee has made very famous lately. And we've talked about the characters because we're going to talk about those all week. I feel that's just something every episode of Live up until Black Friday, you're going to hear nothing about those. Let's talk about the cameos. And I know this is going to probably piss some people off, and I'm fine with that.
We wouldn't be doing our jobs if we weren't pissing people off.
I don't think his best cameo was in a Marvel movie.
Hit me with it. What do you think his best cameo was?
Mallrats.
Yes. You know what? If we're going to talk about cameos, I think it's hard. Like, because I have such an affinity for that movie and that particular scene in general.
Oh, no. When he's talking to Brody and talking about, like, love and stuff, and Brody goes, is like, the thing's dick the same color?
Can Mr. Fantastic, make his dick stretch? Like, I mean, I'm not quoting the movie right, but you get the idea.
And then he looks like after a little while, TS goes up to Stan Lee and goes, "Thank you so much." And he's like, "You might want to get him looked at. He's got a very weird affinity for penises." And I'm like, that was so good. That was so funny. And that's what I think of when I think of Stan Lee. Like, was that moment, like, that's my favorite Stan Lee cameo. As much as I loved him, like, I love every Stan Lee cameo. That's something I get excited for Marvel movies when you go see them in theater.
Mm-hmm.
But I almost feel that Mallrats is really the best one. And I know it's not even Marvel, and I know that's going to upset some people.
I think I agree. I really think that is his best cameo. But if we're going to talk strictly like the Marvel movies, oh God, I don't remember which one it was in, and it's going to kill me. I don't know. It was in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 when Yondu and Yondu and Rocket are traveling through the different dimensions to get to Quill and the rest of the gang over on Ego's planet, and they're going through all the different dimensions, and they stop at one where you see Stan Lee telling the stories.
Yeah.
And you see all those, like, the Watchers, for comic fans who know who the Watchers are. What I liked about that scene was that it kind of tied all his cameos together, because for a while there had been this fan base theory that maybe the reason why he's always popping up in these movies is that he's one of the Watchers, and that James Gunn went and filmed that scene knowing full well that the fans were talking about it, and it turns out hey, Stan Lee is actually a Watcher, and it kind of tied everything together. So I kind of really like that one a lot. But in terms of just seeing him in film overall, I'd have to say I agree with you. Mallrats is the best one.
I mean,
It's
I
really
love
hard
his
to fight
cameos
that
in
one.
I love his cameos in the Marvel movies. Like, they're great. But
I even liked his cameo in Deadpool when he was the strip club DJ.
oh God, that cracked me up.
And I know that
That
he wasn't
cracked me up.
particularly a fan of filming that one, but I thought it was fucking hysterical. But yeah, I mean, it just that's just the power of Stan Lee. Like, he just permeates every subsection of nerd culture. Like, I was watching a video on Facebook earlier today. He was at some awards show. I think he was on the video game award show. He dressed up as a Metal Gear Solid character for a video games award show. Like, fucking Stan Lee, creator of Marvel Comics, dressing up as a fucking Metal Gear Solid character. Like, that guy just permeated all sects of nerd culture, and just like this, it sucks. It'd be like, let's say, I don't know who would be like, I can't think of an analog to like what popular, like if like J.K. Rowling passed away.
I think that
like,
one
even
would
though
be
she's
hard.
done, like, I still think Stan Lee's done more for the medium. If she were to pass away, fucking all hell would break loose. All fucking hell would break loose.
I think J.K. Rowling might be the most modern and I mean, looking at even just all around, that has to be the most modern person even you can talk about. And I feel her legacy is cemented forever because she gave us this crazy universe, which is funny because we're talking about this on the day that the next movie comes out. And go check out Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them too. But I mean, for me, out of all celebrities that we've ever covered and we've talked about on shows before, this has to be the biggest. And I don't want to say that because, I mean, I know eventually someone's going to come along and we're just going to stop everything again. Because that's how it feels. It feels like the world has stopped.
Agreed.
But there is this rumor, and this is a very awesome rumor, that the reason Stan Lee appears in every one of the Marvel movies is because he's God.
Interesting.
And I want to touch on this because I know Watcher, that I've seen that one and I get it, but Stan Lee is God? I could see this.
You know what? I can't even fight against that at all.
Because
really
every
can't.
time you see Stan Lee, it's either really after a bad situation has happened, like in, I think it's the first Avengers, after they're interviewing people like, oh my God, it was crazy, and there's Stan Lee doing an interview, and you're thinking, okay. And I mean, being a strip club DJ in Deadpool, which is kind of funny, but I mean, it is his world. So I'm cool with it.
I'm cool with it. I mean, anything. And I'm just like, I'm like, I've wanted to like write something about it because I feel like this is something that I owe it to myself to write about. But I'm like, even now on this podcast, like, I'm fumbling to be able to, normally I'm a very loquacious type of person. I know what I want to say when I want to say it. And I can't remember the last time I've struggled this hard to find the words to say. Like, I feel like anything that I do say or try to say is not going to do the man justice. And I'm very glad and thankful to be on the show, and I'm very excited to talk about his body of work and what he's done. But I feel like on some level I'm doing a disservice because it's just on some level it's still kind of hitting me as a shock, because I always just looked at him as this immortal type that, like, I always figured, even though he was in his 90s, that I would die before Stan Lee. And it just sucks that we're not like
Betty White.
And I know he hasn't really created anything in a great long time, and he's just been
He
kind of
created
acting
a character
as
with his daughter, though, and I don't know if that's been talked about, but yeah, there's something going to happen there.
It's shocking, and it's sad, and it's all the negative emotions rolled up into one ball, and I'm fumbling because, what is a world without Stan Lee? Like, he was one of the nicest dudes who's created some of the most everlasting characters and stories to ever have existed. And that level of creativity is something we sorely need in this day and age. And now that guy is gone, like, who are we going to have to pick up the mantle? Like, I love J.K. Rowling, and I love the Harry Potter universe, and I can't wait to see the next Fantastic Beasts movie. But I just think, like, the Fantastic Beasts series, as good as it is part of that kind of culture of, they're not necessarily, and you can fight me tooth and nail, and I know there's going to be fans who are probably going to get ready to burn my house to the ground. But I don't think that they're making those movies for creative purposes. I think they're just making them to be cashing in on the Harry Potter name, because the Harry Potter name makes big bucks. I'm not saying they're not good movies. The first Fantastic Beasts was a very good movie, and this next one looks very, 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 very good as well.
I'm excited for it. But I mean, she does help with the writing process and everything, so that does. Apparently, someone does not agree. All right.
She's playing with my iPhone cord right now. It's keeping her happy. But I'm trying to struggle to find the words. They're good films, and I know it comes across as me looking upon them as not so great films, but I think there is a level of, like, all right, we want to keep this brand going because it's financially successful. Whereas I think, like, the Marvel movies, while they're still making them because they're successful, I just think that they're being made because of the stories, like, that Stan had put in place. Like, he laid the foundation, that rock solid foundation that these movies can pull from. And the Harry Potter movie, the OG Harry Potter series, the first 8 movies, those are very excellent movies, and they're very fantastically told from part 1 all the way to Deathly Hallows part 2. And I'll never take away from those movies. I fucking love them, and I love the books, and I love everything about them, and I like these Fantastic Beasts movies, but I don't think these have the same impact. I think they're, technically speaking, maybe just as good as those ones, but they're not, the impact isn't there. Like, I feel like they're just part of the reason why they're making these movies. Is like, take for example the director of Fantastic Beasts, David Yates, who's a very, very talented man, very good director. He's been directing these what was the first one he directed? I believe he directed Order of the Phoenix, and he's directed every Harry Potter movie since. So he directed Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince, Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2, Fantastic Beasts, and now, The Crimes of Grindelwald. So, and that's great. Like, keep him around if he's doing that good a job. But I recognize that Harry Potter has had a huge cultural influence, and there are a lot of Harry Potter fans, but I don't think if it weren't for the ground that Stan Lee broke in terms of what he did with Marvel, I don't think we would have the Harry Potters be as successful as they are. If that makes any sense. I mean, I don't doubt that they wouldn't be successful, but the ground broke for those. Like, I just think nerd culture, like, if nerd culture not being as big as it is now, I don't think those Harry Potter movies would be as, like, mega successful.
Yeah, but the first one came out not when the culture was that strong.
When did the first one come out?
99.
Oh man, so that was before even the first X-Men movie.
It was right after first Spider-Man. And that, I mean, the culture was not that strong then. Like, I think J.K. Rowling might be the closest thing.
Yeah. I mean, the closest thing. I mean, she doesn't. I will go to my dying breath to say that she will never compare to Stan Lee, but she.
I love J.K. Here's the thing: we love I don't know about you, but I love J.K. Rowling. I think she's one of the best writers of our generation, where we don't have that many. That's because, I mean, with self-publishing and stuff, you don't have as many standing out anymore.
Mm-hmm. You know, I'll go to bat when I read a non-Harry Potter book that I like of hers.
There are non-Harry Potter books out there.
I've read non-Harry Potter J.K. Rowling books, and I haven't been a fan.
I have not, but I do enjoy Harry Potter. I do enjoy the Harry Potter stories.
Like, those books are awesome. They're so good, and she never has to work again because she wrote those books. Oh, pardon me. And the foundation that's been built upon them. But I've read some of her stuff outside of the Harry Potter universe, and she's just like, that's like Stephanie Meyer. Say what you will about the Twilight franchise. I have a soft spot for them. I read all the books, seen all the movies.
I don't hate the movies, by the way. I really don't. I don't hate the books. Like, I hate the 50 Shades books, but there's a reason.
Stephanie Meyer is not a great author. She writes those stories well, but she's technically speaking not a good author. Like, I read that one book she did called The Host. It was just so fucking bad. So fucking bad. And that's kind of the same thing. Like, J.K. Rowling, as good as she is at those Harry Potter books, there's a reason why she keeps coming back to the franchise, because that's what works for her. Like, I'd like to see if J.K. Rowling can write a book and have a movie made upon it that isn't in any way, shape, or form related to the Harry Potter franchise. I know, baby. I think then we would have a bona fide classic artist on our hands.
Well,
but
let's talk about that, because if you want to go that route, I don't think movie is successful for a writer. I think, honestly, even if you sell like 10 copies nowadays, I feel like you're a successful writer. But
right, but I'm talking on the magnitude of which J.K. Rowling is, like, everyone's proclaiming her to be, and I don't think she has not earned it. I just think we need to see if she's got another, like, if she can create another mega franchise.
Yeah, but what's his name? Oh, crap. I can't stand his writing. He's I can't. J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yes, Lord of the Rings.
He's one of the greatest literary people of all time, and we've discussed, like, people have discussed that, but he never really ventured outside his world.
No, he didn't. You're absolutely right.
And I mean, it made like 27 hours of movies, and that's just the first one.
Let's be honest. Peter Jackson's responsible for those 24 hours of.
One Christmas, it's coming. One holiday season, they're just going to run all of those back to back to back. It's coming.
I watched all the theatrical versions of the Lord of the Rings movies recently, and I thought they were good. Like, I used to not like them, but I've since reversed my opinion. But those extended versions are just fucking unnecessary. And those Hobbit movies are even more unnecessary. They took one short book that could have easily. I know, baby, The Hobbit sucks.
I fell asleep during all three of those movies.
Those Hobbit movies, it could have been made one movie, done, or maybe two. The fact that they took one really small book and made it into 3 movies, that's what I'm talking about in terms of going back to the well to do what made you famous. Like, Peter Jackson is Peter Jackson. He's a household name because of those 3 original Lord of the Rings movies. Like, let's be honest, no one's out there screaming like, "Oh, Peter Jackson, the guy who did The Frighteners." No one's screaming his, or, Peter Jackson, the guy who made that movie The Lovely Bones that nobody fucking remembers. Like, he's Peter Jackson is the household name because of the original Lord of the Rings movies, and he wanted to make the Hobbit movies, and that's fine. But that's a perfect example of going back to the well, just because that's what you're known for. And I'm afraid that J.K. Rowling, I'm not saying she is doing that, but I'm afraid she's in danger of doing that. But the time will tell. I mean, and that's to circle back to the original reason why we're talking here. Like, Stan Lee didn't just create, like, the X-Men and lived off that the rest of his life. Like, he created Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four, fucking Daredevil, Doctor Doom. Like, he created all these characters that are now have such a wide range of appeal. You got the MCU movies, you got the Netflix shows, you got the animated cartoons. Like, the Marvel empire, which is as big as, if not bigger at this point than Disney, even though Disney technically owns Marvel, it can all be traced back to those first doodles and those first words and those first characters he created way, way, way back in the day. He is so heavily ingrained in pop culture that nobody, even if like J.K. Rowling, every fucking thing she pops out is the greatest thing to come along since sliced bread from now until the end of time, she still wouldn't be able to touch the impact that Stan Lee has had on comics and culture in general.
No, this is true. It's going to be one of those things, and like I said, we're going to talk about this all week, and we're gonna do a few episodes based to this. Like I said, Ashley and Sharon have a great Stan Lee story that needs to be told. I think Ed will join us. Jake from the loosely affiliated.
State Farm?
Yeah, no. It's a dude. Jake from the loosely affiliated League of Genuinely Nice Fellows will drop in. We'll talk more comics because he's more of a comic book like he's the comic book geek of the site. Like he knows way too much about comics. And I feel having that would be nice because I don't know as much. I'm not the strongest knowledgeable person.
Like, I'm a comic book nerd, but I'm more of a DC nerd. Like,
yeah.
if this had been like a DC show, like I could talk comics like it's no tomorrow. And I love the Marvel comics, but I've always been a DC fanboy. So I mean, I could, I have a cursory knowledge, and I've read the books, and I'm a nerd. But DC has always been like my. You ever need a DC expert, you come find me.
These shows are not gonna be long because I can't do it. Like I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but just talking about stuff that makes me sad, I just can't do for a long period of time.
No, I don't blame you. I mean, who wants to talk for 2.5 hours about a guy that they're?
You could. We could do this all day long, but we're not going to because I feel we're going to just repeat things that are constantly being said anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we go, let's just touch on this, and then I'll tell everything that's going on. Let's just say that I feel that Stan Lee is a pop culture. Is Icon bigger than Legend? I know he's got a legend. Like we are 100% sure he has the comic book legend. Is he a pop culture legend or is he a pop culture icon? Because I think no matter what,
I think Stan Lee is the definition of the words. Whenever you think of the word icon or legend, he's gonna be one of the first ones.
Very few people transcend those words, and those words get thrown around a lot. But this is one time where it's okay.
I think legend. Without like Google boxing it right now, I think legend is probably bigger because like icon, like J.K. Rowling's an icon, fucking Stephen King is an icon, Todd McFarlane, I guess I would even say is an icon, but Stan Lee is a legend. Like icons are great, but legends never fade.
True.
Legends their stories are told hundreds of thousands of years from now when our children and our children's children and our children's 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 children are all in the ground, dead, and our existences have long been wiped from the face of this earth. People will still be talking about Stan Lee. He is a legend that can never be matched and will never be forgotten.
And it also helps that his characters will never go away.
Absolutely.
I believe that's going to be something we will always have. We will always have these characters somehow, some way in the public eye, always.
Exactly. I could not agree with you more.
So before we go, I want to touch on what's going on. Coming up, December is the 25 days of Christmas, and we've got a bunch of stuff planned. A lot of stuff. But before then, it is Thanksgiving, and I feel this year we're actually going to do something. I guess apparently we're recording a Friendsgiving episode of Live.
Ooh.
It's going to be the Winos Live collaboration, where I feel like we're just going to be drunk, eating turkey, and talking about stupid shit. So that'll be fun for you guys to listen to. And then on Black Friday, it is Spooktacular 5, because what's scarier than Halloween? Black Friday. I
also have an idea I want to talk to you real quick off the air. I don't want to give it away in case we do decide to do it, but I was thinking about another episode if we could squeeze it in.
Of Live or Cinecrap? Because
Cinecrap.
I knew it. And that show's coming back very soon. Also, SNS returns Sunday because it is Survivor Series weekend, and I'm kind of feeling froggy right now. So there's that. The Winos returns in a couple of weeks. I'm trying to think. Is that everything? I'm trying to get back on track. It's taken me a while this year, but let's talk about this lawsuit really quick. I don't even care. I'm not going to say who's doing it, but I got this email about an image that supposedly was used on the website that was in my stock images, and they decided to tell me that I owe them $2,000 for using this picture for about 2 weeks.
Oh my God. Oh Lord! For a stock image, like $2,000
because
for a stock
apparently
image.
the photographer did not issue you could use it, and someone else did, and now everyone, like, I'm the one that got in trouble for it. And I was like, okay, so I discussed this with this dude while I woke up, and I was freaking the F out because I'm like, this is the end of everything. He's like, but we can lower it as low as we can go to $750.
You can go fuck yourself.
Yeah, well, and I went, $750? What the fuck? Do you not realize that we are a small time fucking online website that probably doesn't even, I'm not going to say we make that in a year or not, because that's just giving away too much. But you do realize we do not make that in an article, right? Like, fuck you, dude. So, like, people have to click on the ads for us to make money, asshat.
Right.
So
What a dick.
So
how did it go down?
okay, so they send this email. I freak out. We're on the phone, and he goes, "We're going to see if we can do payments." And apparently he whatever at this point. So I do some research afterwards and find out they're an extortionist type company that just send terrible emails.
So
yeah,
it's a fucking scam.
yeah. So now my asshole-ish self is like, I'm gonna fuck with these motherfuckers. So I sent back a message asking them, and by the way, they sent one to every email that's listed on the website. So all of the editors got this same email, and I went, "You're a dick."
That is a dick move.
They also got my address, which is not out there. So
that is shady.
Yeah, no, that pisses me off. And so I'm assuming they're probably stealing shit from UPS, and because we order a lot from Amazon. And so there's that. But so today the guy calls me back, and I didn't answer it because one, it was like 10:30 in the morning and I was asleep. So it goes to voicemail. He's like, "Please get in touch with me. I'm going to knock it down. We discussed doing payments." And so I sent back an email going, "Hey, I know what your company is now, and I've got a bunch of questions." And I asked the questions of why did you send the same email to 6 different people with different numbers on every email? And dun dun dun. And on top of that, how did you come up with this money? And they, the response they send back. By the way, the response happened while we were recording. And they sent this cookie cutter. Oh, it's a cookie cutter response. It's, well, my client does this, and my client's work is beautiful, and my client. So at the end of my last email before I got the cookie cutter response, I was like, "Come at me, bro." And
come at me, bro.
I don't know why, because I thought that was funny. And this time, I responded back going, "Hey, look, I'll pay you how much we made that day. It was 2 cents. If you want that." I mean, it could break my bank.
And have they have? Well, you just sent that.
I sent that. They have sent that within the last hour.
Oh, I'm very interested to see what this response is going to be. How the fuck do you try to sue someone over a stock image? 1 and 2.
I mean, if the stock image people used it involuntarily, that's not on me. That's on them. Fuck you.
Send a lawsuit to the company that's distributing the image.
And I told him that.
I
fucking told him that. I'm like, "Here's where I got it, you dick." I sent him the link yesterday. Never heard another response. The only response is, "Well, we want the money." So apparently, what they do is they talk people. They send these emails out over and over and over, and the idea is to threaten you and to give you money. So if like 5 people a year give them $2,000, they're pretty much set. And they do this with not just images. They do this with video. They do this with writing. They do this with a whole bunch of things. So they send these out constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And they're always cookie cutter, and they're always the same fucking responses, because I was reading in a forum yesterday about what they do and found it, and they sent me the same cookie cutter response they sent someone else.
Fucking scam artists, man.
So when I sent back something that's not probably in their realm, like, "I'll send you the 2 cents." And I'm like, "Hey, if we want to waste everybody's time, let's do this." If they want to take a website to court, which, funny that they do not have a lawyer in the U.S. They say they represent a client in the U.S., and if that person wants to take the time to file out-of-state fucking lawsuit, good for them, because that's thousands of dollars. Like, if you're willing to go that far, that's on you, boo-boo.
They're spending more money to take you to task in Canada, assuming, like, let's just say that's where it is. They're going to spend. It's going to take them more money to sue you than it is the actual money they're suing you for.
I know, and then I can also prove that where I got it, and I can also prove that I've made 2 cents. So I'm not really that worried.
Shit, I'll pay the 2 cents.
Oh no, like I'll take up. It's time to start a GoFundMe. 2 cents, everybody.
Fastest GoFundMe in history,
and no one would donate. And all I needed was 2 cents, and I only made 1. It's the complete opposite of fucking It's a Wonderful Life. Shit. And so that's happened, but I'm going to let everyone know that's not going to deter us. Tonight or tomorrow night, because this is going up today. Tomorrow night, we are covering Postmodern Jukebox at the Orpheum Theater in Memphis, Tennessee.
Ooh.
And I got to prove for someone today that has made my loins tickle.
Who'd you get approved for?
I cannot say yet in public. I'll tell you off air. If you want more, you can call our 1-900 number. That's 1-900-909-9900. Don't actually call that fucking number. I think it's a porn line now. But that's a thing. So, but we wanted to take the time to end this with a little bit of upbeatness. So, guys, don't forget to send an email to live. Hey, here's an idea. Send us your Stan Lee memories. Like, if you met him at a convention, send it to us. We'll read them on air. TBK Live at tbkmagazine.com.
That's a good idea.
We'll do this like whole Stan Lee thing. We'll read those on like the last episode of the month before Christmas. So, and I'll tell you everyone more about the 25 Days of Christmas as we get closer. That's going to wrap up this edition of Live. There's only one way to end this show, and I'm not going to end it with Torgo. So, Brody, thanks for joining us. If you would like to add anything, this is your opportunity.
I just like to say thank you for having me. Short and sweet, to the point, but you know what? Stan Lee is God amongst men, and this world is a little bit darker without having him in it.
So we're going to end the show a little differently. I think I'm going to end every show like this for the next couple of weeks. Guys, don't forget, with great power comes great responsibility. Excelsior.
Excelsior.